Welcome to the What Is She Even Reading podcast.
I'm Claire, and I love to read.
I'm Jeremy, and I don't.
Join us each week as we read through some of today's most popular books as Jeremy discovers what is she even reading. Hello, and welcome back to the What Is She Even Reading podcast. I'm Claire.
I'm Jeremy.
And we are back with chapters 16 through 31 for A Court of Thorns and Roses. Woo woo.
Yep.
How are you liking it so far?
I mean, it's a decent book.
Yeah, this middle part in the beginning is a little slow. I think that's where people kind of get hung up on.
Yeah, there's a lot of chapters where she's like piddling around the house or something. And it's like, that's boring.
But it did kind of pick up towards the end of this little this chapter section.
Yeah.
So, okay, so a reminder, there are spoilers for A Court of Thorns and Roses, or ACOTAR for short, for up to chapter 31 in this episode. So, you've been warned. If you haven't read, come back. So, is that all we do at the beginning?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so chapter 15, where did we end up?
She had been in the woods looking for the surreal. Mm-hmm. She caught him. And then the Naga things showed up.
Yes.
And she killed a couple of them. And then Tamlin came and saved the day.
Yes. Okay, so chapter 16, this is just a broad summary of what happens in this chapter. Alice is taking care of Feyre after the Naga attack. Feyre goes down to dinner and finds out all the things that she thought were true about fairies are wrong. Her family's memories were glamored, so they don't remember the beast taking her. So she really has no hope in them coming to rescue her. And Tamlin promises to get her some paint supplies and then take her to the gallery the next day. That's kind of the summary of what happens. Mm-hmm.
So, right at the beginning, my first note was basically that Alice had brought up a cup of molten chocolate and that it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. And I noted that because I'm imagining not just, a normal cup of hot chocolate, like literally, if you had imagine your favorite chocolate bar just melted down.
Yeah.
And you're just drinking liquid that.
And did that sound appealing to
you?
Yeah.
It did. Very much so.
Are you going, I wish I had some while I'm reading this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also noted it was weird that they talk about purring a lot.
They do. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, it's just odd. Like, I don't quite get it.
I mean, at some point I don't know if it's in one of the chapters, she talks about, like, petting him, and it's kind of funny. Mm-hmm. I think it's funny.
Yeah.
But is that all you had, your first note?
I think so, yeah.
So I noted that Alice, her sister, and her sister's mate were murdered 50 years ago. And so Alice is taking care of her two children. So poor Alice. Mm-hmm. And they have a hard time having children. That's what, like, the kind of the thing for the fairies are. So, because she notes that it was weird, or it was shocking that her sister was able to have another one quite so quickly after the first one. So,
yeah, because it also says that they don't reach adulthood until they're 75.
Yeah, imagine that. So, do you think that means they're still, like, when are they, like, fully grown? Like, are they just are they in toddlerhood for, like, 20 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, do they grow, or is it just, like, maturing, like, mental maturing?
I don't know. It doesn't say.
I know. I have questions.
I'm going to go to the assumption that they just are slow growing.
Yeah.
So it's not like they, grow up to be full size, if you will, in 15 years and then just idiots for the next 60.
That's true. They're just slow growing. But that seems wild to have a toddler for 20 plus years, right?
Yeah. I mean, perhaps their perception of time is different.
I guess. I mean, yeah, because they live for hundreds of years. True. Or forever, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. well, and then Alice gives her advice on how to actually trap the cereal, which is just don't bring the dead chickens, just get him or it a new robe, and he'll grovel at your feet. So and so finally, this is when Feyre goes down. My next note is she's like, I thought fairies couldn't lie, and Hamlin chokes on his wine. It's kind of about time that she finds out that this isn't true. It's been going on. No, they can't lie to me. It must be true. And finally. So she learns that basically everything she thought as a human
was wrong.
He's wrong.
Except for the ash.
Except for the ash arrows, which I'm like, convenient. But iron doesn't work anymore, or doesn't work.
They can lie all
they can lie. Yeah, pretty much all of that, what she thought is true, gone. So.
Then they seem a little surprised. Or is it Lucian? He says, you went to catch the cereal, and she replies, I caught the cereal.
I think it was Tamlin.
Oh, was it?
Well, because Lucian knew.
I guess that's true.
Because he set her up to go set it, to go catch him. When she is talking about this, I guess, I think it is, whoever it is, Tamlin or Lucian, saying, like, you actually snared the cereal, a human girl. It made me think of, you've seen Legally Blonde, right?
It's been a long time.
Okay, well, when she's goes to Harvard and her boyfriend her ex-boyfriend broke up with her, is there, and he's like, you got into Harvard? And she's like, what? Like, it's hard? Like, that's what it kind of gave the vibes of, like, what? Like, it's hard to catch the cereal? Which I think it is. But she manages to catch it fairly easily. So, they talk about, can fairies be friends with mortals? And they say that they used to be 500 years ago. But because they teamed up to protect the mortals, or to join the mortals on their fight. But I guess they're not really friends anymore, obviously.
No, and we learned that time that Tamlin was a child at the time of the war.
Yeah, because she's like, were you one of those? And he's like, I'm not that old. Which I'm like, how would you know, though? He was kind of like, I'm not that old, but, like, you look young. How is she supposed to know how old you are? But he does say, like, he would basically, like, if I'm against slavery, against tyranny, I would gladly go to my death, no matter whose freedom I was defending. So he basically is like, no, I wasn't. I was a child, but I would have. Yeah. I think he's just trying to win points, right?
Yeah.
And then he shocks her and basically says, like, oh, by the way, your family is safe, and they don't remember you being taken. So rest easy.
Yeah. They think she's away with some long-lost aunt on her deathbed or something.
Yeah, and they're getting, they're alive, they're fed and cared for, and they, like, know there's a rumor that there's a threat in, I said it wrong the whole episode last time, Prithian? Prithian, and they're prepared to run should any of the warning signs about the wall faltering occur. So he's kind of, like, set in this, like, safeguard that they'll run away. So
it does say that he was afraid that her father might come or persuade some villagers to come across the wall and further violate the treaty.
Do you think her father would have come?
No.
Yeah.
He seems like a bum.
I mean, she was surprised, but then also, like, I knew he would. So
maybe, but my guess would be no.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So then he's like, I'm going to bring you some paint, right?
And he says you can paint wherever you want. I don't care.
Yeah, why her need to paint all over the furniture and, like, on the walls is strange to me. But
she's a toddler.
Yeah.
Painting on the walls. Painting pictures on the walls.
And at the end of my last note for this chapter is, he smiled at me And she notes that Isaac had never smiled at me like that. And Isaac had never made my breath catch just a little bit. Why are you laughing? It's cute.
She's falling in love with Tamlin.
Yeah. So is that all your notes for chapter 16?
Yep.
Okay, so chapter 17. Tamlin shows up with a fairy in the middle of the night whose wings have been cut off. Feyre helps calm him down, and then Tamlin goes off to dig him a grave alone. That's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
My first note, I mean, these are really just like Tamlin is rushing in with this fairy who is screaming.
Yeah. I mean, I noted the description of the fairy. He's a lesser fairy. Blue skin, gangly limbs, pointed ears, and long onyx hair. Seems kind of like an ugly fella. I mean,
like an avatar.
It's not what I'm picturing.
Well, blue skin, gangly limbs, pointed ears, and don't avatar people have
I guess so.
long,
For some reason, I
dark
kind of
hair?
am imagining, in the Trolls movie, the Bergens.
Yes.
Those things, but with wings.
Okay. But that wouldn't be gangly limbs.
They got gangly limbs.
I guess so.
They do.
They're just kind of okay. Well, I'm thinking, have you ever seen? Oh gosh, X-Men, the more current one. I think you have. There's a blue like devil character. He's not a main character. That's what I'm picturing. He's a young kid. He's blue. He's got wings.
Oh.
He's got a tail.
No, I was imagining something ugly.
Well, anyways, that's what they look like. And his wings have been cut off. Yep. That's basically the
He's got
note.
Slippery skin.
Well, okay. First off, she notes that, right? Velvet, smooth, and slippery. And then she says, a texture I would never be able to paint, not even if I had an eternity to master it. What? She does this with something else. I think I took a note of it. But, like, a lot of times she's talking about, which I get that she's an artist. I get it. But that's a weird comment to think when this man is literally writhing.
He's dying in front of them. Basically.
Yes, and she's like, oh, I could never paint his skin. Right?
Yeah.
And then poor Lucian.
Vomits in a plant.
Did we figure out, is it Lucian or Lucian?
I think it's Lucian.
Lucian, okay. Lucian vomited in the plant, which I thought was funny. What a whip.
Yes.
And this was, so his wounds weren't clotting, right? He was just bleeding out. And Feyre was like, can't you just use your magic? Which we're all thinking that,
Can't you
right?
just magic him up? Come on.
And he's like, no, not for major damage.
Reparo.
Once, but not any longer. So I guess their magic is no longer as strong as it once was.
Because of the blight.
Yeah. So one thing I did note, which I didn't say up here, was the fairy, the blue fairy, said that she took my wings. So we don't know who this mysterious she that keeps popping up.
She's been mentioned several times.
Yes. So Feyre, because there's not really much they can do for this guy, strokes his hair. She notes it again right here. I stroke his limp hair, its texture like liquid night. Another I would never be able to paint, but would try to perhaps forever. What? This man is literally dying, and you're like, couldn't paint his skin. I also couldn't paint his hair. That's a weird comment, right?
Yes.
Like, fellow artist out there. Actually, I don't know why I said, I guess, artist. Do you think of this when you see people like, or other things? I can never paint that texture. That's a weird thing to say. But I'm not an artist.
But she is.
Okay, well. That's my note. Your next one.
Yeah, they're like saying a prayer for him with the cauldron.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it kind of went along with I'm not trying to, land of milk and honey. Very Christian. right?
Yes.
Fear no evil, feel no pain, which started to go along the lines of like feel no evil, hear no evil, see no evil.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? But and then Tamlin's going out to
go bury the poor feller.
Mm-hmm.
And Pharaoh wants to go with him, but he says it's too deadly.
Yeah. And he asked her why she did it, and she's like, I wouldn't want to die alone. And I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end. So. And she apologizes for killing his guard. How do you say his name? Andros?
Yeah,
Andros?
Something like that.
This whole podcast is going to be
Andy.
me going, how do you say that name? I think you need to listen to the audiobooks and be in charge of that.
Write it down phonetically.
Because I will forever not remember. And she apologizes for killing him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the end of the chapter.
Yep.
Anything else besides Pharaoh wanting to paint everyone's skin, but not being able to? Chapter 18, Pharaoh... Lucian. I had to think about it. And Tamlin go for a ride. They go out to this glen, and then they walk over to a silver sparkling pool that's made of starlight. We learn of... I've already forgotten Lucian's past. Lucian gives Feyre a jeweled hunting knife and kind of apologizes, but not really. Mm-hmm. So...
my first couple comments are just... I thought we'd go for a ride. No killing involved.
Yeah, my note is no weapons were sheathed at his side or on his baldric or whatever, but a knife hilt. Why would you not bring weapons? Literally, every time they've left this place, they've gotten attacked. Why would they not bring weapons? Right? Regardless if you're not stupid. Planning. I mean, I know they have a small knife, but like, wouldn't you bring weapons?
Probably.
Because look, they were out there just lying around, and then that big... I've forgotten the name. The thing that they were not supposed to look at. The bog.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Naga. Like, I'd be like, can I carry your weapon for you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my note.
Yeah, and then I just noted he smiled when she asked where to.
Yeah, because he knew.
Yeah. Then they're going to sit on a grassy knoll.
Swaying crocuses and snowdrops and bluebells.
Yes. Basically, it's pretty.
Yeah, there's some... certainly wasn't going to ruin the experience by sitting on a blanket.
Yeah, because they brought a blanket, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, no, I want to sit in the grass.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure she wanted to touch the grass.
And then I noted, she says, I could picture him here in his beast form, curled up in the grass, dozing.
What a weird thing. But could she paint him?
Probably.
And she asks if he wants her to grovel with gratitude for bringing her there.
Mm-hmm. Your next, ours is the same note.
One. Also said that you like being brushed. And if I'm a clever girl, I might train you with treats. Is that something the Surreal said?
Yes, I think so.
I suppose he is a dog cat thing, wolf cat thing.
Well, that's when he's purring, right? Yeah. So then it describes the pool. She's like, I could tell that it wasn't water, but something more rare and infinitely more precious. She notes that it looks like starlight, which I'm like, how does
that even mean? Like,
how does this mortal girl know what starlight looks like? Right? I mean, I would assume it looks silvery and shiny.
I mean, yeah, or is it like the night sky with stars in it?
I don't know, but she describes it as a sparkling silver pool. I think it looks like iridescent almost.
Weird.
Yeah. And Tamlin's like, it is starlight.
It is starlight, you idiot. What do you think? Of course it's starlight.
I just didn't get... I don't know. How did she know that's what it was? Unless he had pointed it out earlier. Did he?
I don't know.
Also, why is it there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why
Doesn't
is there
make
a
any
pool of
sense.
starlight? I don't think I would get in the starlight.
No, like, is it hot?
No, I bet it's just literally water that looks like shimmery. I'm
But it
imagining.
is starlight. It's not water.
I guess so, but I'm imagining like glitter water. Is it viscous? What's the viscosity on this water?
What's the pH?
I don't care about. Oh yeah, you might care about the pH before you go. I mean, they are swimming though, so obviously it didn't hurt them.
True.
Must be pretty neutral. From the starlight, Tamlin starts telling Feyre about Lucian. Oh gosh, Lucian. Okay, I'm overthinking.
Call him Luke if you need to.
No. He is the youngest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court. He is the youngest of 7 brothers. And apparently, the Autumn Court is cutthroat. They, like... Basically, it's not the eldest who inherits the title. It's the strongest.
Mm-hmm. But Lucian never cared about that.
Yeah, so he Yeah, it says he spent his youth doing everything a High Lord's son probably shouldn't be doing. Wandering the courts, making friends with the sons of other High Lords, and being with females who are a far cry from the nobility of the Autumn Court. And he fell in love with a fairy who his father considered to be not appropriate for a High Lord's son. And they killed her. They executed her in front of him.
Yeah.
And his 2 older brothers held him down and made him watch. Awful. So he left. He cursed his father, abandoned his title in the Autumn Court, and walked out. And so without his title protecting him, his brothers decided they could then eliminate him from the competition of High Lord, right? Mm-hmm. So they were trying to kill him. 3 of them went to kill him, and only 1 came back. So Lucian killed them. He killed 1. Tamlin killed the other. Yeah, and then Tamlin claimed Lucian as his own and named him emissary. Emissary?
Yes.
Since he had already made many friends with the other courts. So,
yeah.
Poor Lucian.
I know.
Kind of
it's a loving family he's got there.
sad little story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about the same thing. But I think that's terrible that they basically held him down and made him watch them execute the girl he loved. But...
And then I think Feyre starts talking about herself and her father. They've amassed their wealth on 3 ships to sail to Barat for invaluable spices and cloth. Mm-hmm. But the ship sank, didn't they, or something like that?
I think, yes.
Or got lost.
Yes.
And then they moved to the cottage, and it took almost 3 years for the money to entirely run out that they had. So she started hunting when she was 14.
Yeah. With her bratty older sisters.
Who didn't do anything.
And Lucian comes up and says that Tamlin told me that your first shot was to save the Suriel's life.
The Nagas came up.
Yeah, not your own. And so he kind of apologizes. Mm-hmm. Like, I heard you scream and I hesitated.
Yeah.
Not long, but I did. And so it's not really an apology. It's just kind of like, yeah, I did, but I probably won't do it again. Yeah. Here's a knife for
Please
you.
Don't stab me with it.
And
that's it.
That's pretty much the end of the chapter. But we learn a lot about Lucian, this weird pool of starlight that we have more questions on. There was something like if you took a cup, like if you drank a cup of it, you'd be happy until your last breath.
Well, how long is your last breath from that?
I don't know.
Is it
5 seconds?
5 minutes? 5 years? 5 decades?
Why is it there?
5 centuries? How did it get there?
Yeah.
Who put it there?
Okay, chapter 19. Tamlin takes Feyre to the gallery. Aw, a little date. They fast forward a couple weeks to where Feyre has spent most of her time painting. She thinks her family has forgotten her by now. She manages to snare Tamlin. And he tells her a poem, or gives her a poem. And then they're also setting up for, I should have looked up how to say this. Calanmai. And they get a visit from the Atter. Dun, dun, dun. So, I think you have the first note.
Yeah, my first couple notes are just about their time in the gallery. And she talks about how, with the paintings, each a story and an experience. And yeah, it's just like a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
Gobbledygook. Stayed until I was drunk on the art. Till I was dizzy with hunger.
Yeah, I think my first note, I feel like she was having a dream. Did she have a dream in this chapter?
Possibly.
Yeah, because she notes, a horrible pale woman ripping me to shreds, all watched over by a shadow I can never quite glimpse. I slowly stopped being so afraid. Stay with the High Lord, you will be safe, so I did. So I feel like she's having nightmares. Mm-hmm. And she's just kind of painting.
Yeah.
She painted him, Tamlin.
Mm-hmm. She speculates if the paints had been a distraction to get her to stop complaining and stop being a pain in the ass about wanting to see her family. So... But she said she'd just stopped asking, just as Azuriel had ordered. Like a stupid, useless, obedient human.
Yeah. He gives her a rose or something. I didn't take. It says, my fingers tearing on the thorns, which I'm like, is this what it's named after? A court of thorns and roses? Basically, they just have a moment, right? Mm-hmm. They kiss.
Yes.
But not on the lips, I don't think.
You don't think so?
But
basically, it gets her all hot and heavy.
Okay. Yes. And he says that one day there will be answers for everything, but not right now, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're getting closer. They are, dare I say, falling in love. Mm-hmm. She somehow, this is kind of just like a montage of scenes for the past couple weeks, essentially. But there's one where she sets a snare and ends up catching him, which I'm like, did he let her? Probably. But I thought they were going to have like a Spider-Man kiss.
That would have been
weird,
but a good reference.
But they didn't, but I thought they were going to. And he reads her. He brings her a series of 5-line poems. And there were 5 of them. She doesn't obviously remember, she doesn't know how to read. So he reads them aloud, and they're dirty. It's just such a random little tidbit of, like, it's so random, don't you think?
Yeah. But don't they have, like, the words that she had written down?
Yeah.
That she didn't know?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he, like, basically wrote her poetry. Oh.
Yeah, sweet.
But it's dirty poetry, so.
Because he's after something.
I guess. Yeah, because it says Tamlin took the papers and read the 5th poem, the dirtiest and foulest of them all. So we don't even know what it says, but.
Okay, so then we learn a little bit about Tamlin. Mm-hmm. And he sort of fell into the High Lord position because it seems like basically everyone else was killed.
Mm-hmm. By the High Lord of an enemy court.
Yes. But that's about it.
Yeah, and the end of this chapter is they're just setting up for...
the Fire Night?
Yeah, Calanmai.
Calanmai.
And she's not invited, basically.
She's not.
And then the Adder shows up, and Tamlin hides her behind Lucian.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't note a lot of this, but he kind of glamours her, basically. But he basically is like, she's wondering why you haven't given up yet, and why 4 Naga wound up dead not too long ago. And basically just threats. And so he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And Tamlin says there are certain fairies, or Lucian, I don't know which one. Tamlin or Lucian says there are certain fairies in Prythian who inspired the legends that you humans are so afraid of. Some, like that one, are myth given flesh. So basically, not all of them are good, which I think we saw coming.
Yeah.
But, and yeah, they go back to the house, and she's contemplating who it was to make Tamlin and Lucian so nervous, and to command who the she is who's basically commanding that type of thing. So.
Yeah.
Those were your notes, but sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, so chapter 20. It's Calamai. This is a blanket statement. I'm so sorry for all the mispronunciation I will have. I cannot pronounce things in my normal life, much less in a fantasy novel. So please bear with me. I'm trying. I suck at it. But carry on, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's Calamai, or Fire Knight. Tamlin tells her she can't come again. She's supposed to stay locked in her bedroom, but of course she does not stay. Why would she? Why would she go out into this dangerous world?
She's stupid.
She gets cornered by some fairies, and the most beautiful man she has ever seen shows up to save her. And spoiler, it's not Tamlin.
It's not.
Okay,
So my first note was, she goes past the game park. Do they have like a soccer field, a baseball field out there?
They're out there playing football?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Baseball, maybe some basketball, maybe pickleball court. They seem like they'd be into pickleball.
Maybe,
right?
Yeah. Some lacrosse.
Yeah, maybe a golf course.
Yeah, I mean, what else they got to do for hundreds of years?
Hundreds of years in this fancy ass place.
Yeah.
Play some golf.
I didn't know that was funny.
That was funny. A game park. Like, what? Is it an arcade even?
No.
And she says there was a string tied to her gut that pulled me towards those hills to go hear the fairy drums. Stupid.
What do you think that is? Is it just the drums calling her?
Probably some sort of magic.
And we learned that as a High Lord, Tamlin has to participate in the Great Rite, which we don't find out what that is until the end. But basically, he's like, go lock your doors and set up a snare, and whatever you do, don't come out of your room, basically.
Yeah.
She, of course, leaves. I guess that's when the string is pulling her, right?
I think so, yeah.
And she's just kind of like wandering around.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know why she thinks this is a good idea. But some fairies kind of find her and corner her because they figure out she's human.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, once the rite's performed, we'll have some fun.
Yeah.
And then she hears this voice, a deep, sensual male voice that says, there you are, I've been looking for you. And standing before her is the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. That's literally the quote. So
yes.
Not just me saying that. But
that's the end of the chapter.
That's the end of the chapter. It's really quick.
Basically, she disobeys her orders. As per usual. Again, why does she think going out at night is a good idea? It's never been a good idea.
It hasn't ever worked out for her.
Stupid
Maybe
girl.
It's the little string pulling her there.
Maybe, but
Okay, so chapter 21, Lucian finds her and tells her about Calamai. And it's the start of the spring, and Tamlin has to let magic enter his body and will find a maiden to couple with, to basically promote the magic growth in the spring.
It really doesn't make sense.
Okay. So Lucian takes her back to the room and tells her to stay there. And again, after she's just been cornered, we'll get into this. Once she's just been cornered in, like, she leaves her room again, and she runs into Tamlin, who they have a moment, but he ends up biting her neck. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a weird chapter.
Yes.
This is when you get kind of into the fairy fantasy world, and I feel like you've been like kind of tiptoeing, and this is like you just kind of are finally like diving into the deep end a little bit.
Yeah.
But shall we get going?
Sure.
So, this man's voice is also described as a purr, but he asks, what's a mortal woman doing here on Fire Night? She notes that he looks as if he's been molded from the night itself.
What does that mean?
I don't know. She describes a lot of things weirdly. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think it means?
I have no idea.
Maybe he's just dark coloring? You have no thoughts or theories of what that means?
No.
Okay. I guess she asked, like, oh, you're not from the Spring Court? And he's like, do I look like I'm from the Spring Court? Which, I mean, to be quite honest, that is a stupid question because he's not wearing a mask. So that's kind of the dead giveaway, but...
Yeah. He says that all monsters have been let out of their cages tonight. Mm-hmm. So no matter what court they belong to, they can roam around.
Yeah, until the dawn.
Yeah.
And then Lucian finds her, yanks her out of the crowd, and tosses her over his shoulder like as if I were a sack of potatoes.
Yes. Which is interesting. When she was describing his eyes, one was russet and shone as brightly as his red hair. Mm-hmm. Russets, of course, being a potato.
Oh, that's true.
So a little potato themed.
I always think it's funny that he's from the autumn court and he's like got red, like he is basically autumn themed. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
That's the coloring.
Yeah.
I guess same with Tamlin. He's light coloring at spring.
Yeah. And then,
well,
we don't know what.
Yeah.
We don't know what court. Beautiful man there is.
Yes.
Light man is.
No. But then Lucian's like, it's the great right. Cauldron boil me, which is something they say a lot.
Thing.
But he's like, didn't anyone tell you what it is? And I'm like, of course no one has. No one's explained this to her. They've all just been like, please just don't leave your room. Which, I mean, in her defense, while it is stupid to leave her room, and I would not be leaving my room, I would be curious what all this commotion was.
Yeah.
So, it signals the official start of spring in Prythian as well as the mortal world. So, and their crops depend on the magic they regenerate on Calamai tonight. So they do this by conducting the Great Rite. Each of the 7 High Lords of Prythian performs this every year. Since their magic comes from the earth and returns to it at the end, it's a give and take. So, we already kind of talked about it, but he basically lets the magic take his body, and then he finds a maiden to couple with, essentially.
Yeah, this seems like something that some dude made up to get laid.
No, it regrows their crops,
some
Jeremy.
High Lord many moons ago, many centuries ago, is like, hey guys, hey girl, we need to regenerate this magic, so I'm gonna have to sleep with you. You have no choice. You want to eat, you got no choice.
I mean,
right?
You're not wrong. It does kind of sound like that.
Sounds like that.
You're right.
Maybe it's not, but that's just what it sounds like.
It does sound like that. Yeah, I don't know. They don't. It's kind of like he sacrifices a white stag, and then there's just like females lined up for him to pick from. But because her smell is there, he's gonna be like, where is she?
Yeah. Lucian says that Tam's not the only one who gets to perform the rite. They're free to mingle once he's made his choice. And he says, our own dalliances tonight will help the land too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like,
That's
buddy.
what, maybe you are right. Maybe it's some dude made this up.
And he also says, I don't think you would have liked it. Tonight is not for lovemaking.
Yeah.
So.
And then once again, he's like, please stay in your room tonight. Don't come out. Don't open the door. Don't come out till morning. And then she's like, I unlocked the door and strode into the hallway. Girl, why?
She's stupid.
And she's like, what a ridiculous holiday. Absurd. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. But she notes that it was good that humans had cast them aside, so humans must not celebrate holidays.
That's true.
But
or at least not this one.
She eats her dinner, which is a half a loaf of bread, an apple, and a lemon tart, and nibbled on a chocolate cookie, which I think you noted first as the original girl dinner.
Did I?
I feel like we talked about it.
Probably.
But then surprise, surprise, Tamlin shows up. Mm-hmm.
He's got no shirt on.
Yeah, he like grabs her.
He's painted with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. He bites her neck, and she kind of likes it.
Yeah, he talks about the maiden. Did
Yes.
not ask him to be gentle. He would have been gentle with her.
Okay. I think we don't have to go into detail of this. Basically, the gist
she
is
gets all hot and heavy and kind of likes it.
he bites her on the neck.
Yes.
And that's the end of the chapter.
She wants it.
Okay. Chapter 22. The summary for this is very pitiful. Feyre and Tamlin have a romantic dinner, and then she shows him her paintings. That's pretty much all that happens in this chapter. So she basically is like, I'm not going to be afraid of showing him that he bit me, and just walks downstairs with it like
On display.
And Lucian's like, what is that? And Tamlin's like, if Feyre can't be bothered to listen to orders, then I can't be held accountable for the consequences, which I kind of agree a little bit. But something happens, and she calls them a fairy pig, which I think is funny. But she goes to paint.
And keeps painting them as pigs.
Yes. I'm like, I like a little bit of pettiness. I enjoy that.
We learned that Alice is originally from the Summer Court. Mm-hmm. And that's where her kin still dwells. Mm-hmm. As Suriel had said, the High Lords were power, and yet something had to be truly wrong if this was all he could manage. Something with, I guess, some magic he had done. Mm-hmm. And then they're just showing some paintings.
Mm-hmm. And he picks one he wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she didn't lock the bedroom door.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay, chapter 23. Tamlin finally lets Feyre see the world without the glamour on it, which she didn't realize was on it, so that's kind of funny. But, and she gives him a kiss on his hand. Oh. That's like really the gist of this chapter. So
yeah.
This is when it gets a little like tedious reading these.
Yeah, because like she can hear all sorts of extra stuff and whatnot, and things are more beautiful or something, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, wow, wow. Because they're outside, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So she sees it. She loves it.
Everything was magic.
Yeah, pretty much it.
Blah.
Anything else you want to note from this chapter?
Not really.
I mean, basically, she just describes everything as beautiful. I'm sure
Tamlin's
it is.
even more beautiful.
Yes, I'm sure it is very pretty. But
yeah.
Chapter 24, she doesn't recognize Alice, because the glamour has been lifted for everything now. I was mistaken in the last summary. So she discovers that there have been lots of fairies everywhere, and now that her glamour has been lifted, she's like can see everything and hear everything. And at the end of the chapter, Feyre discovers a severed head in the garden, courtesy of the Night Court. So she notes that my first note is a squat woman with skin made from tree bark who fussed with my breakfast dishes. And she doesn't recognize her. I think she's like, who are you? And it's Alice.
Yeah.
And Alice is like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I am Alice.
Yeah, and she
goes outside, or goes out of her room and in the hall, and there's a bunch of fairies wandering around.
Yeah, and she asks Tamlin, like, there are a lot of...
When did they get here?
Fairies here. When did they get here?
Been here.
And she's like, what? And so, basically, as she's been running around and, like, sneaking around the castle, they've been just watching her.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny and a little embarrassing to think about. Mm-hmm. But, so she had a audience the night that she ran after that, the puka.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I thought I had been so stealthy. Meanwhile, I had been tiptoeing past fairies who probably laughed their heads off at the blind human following an illusion. But then why did no one stop her?
Because they probably weren't allowed to.
I guess so. Did they go and get Tamlin, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, she asked why the glamour didn't apply to them. I assume them is other...
Oh, like the puka and whatnot, I think. They're not members of his court.
Yeah. And so then the next morning, she finds a head in the garden. Mm-hmm. It's a bleeding male high fae head spiked atop a fountain statue of a great heron flapping its wings. And it's signed with a mountain with 3 stars, which means the Night Court. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the chapter. Any other notes?
Nope.
Okay, chapter 25. Summer solstice is here, so we are flying.
Yeah, it's already summertime.
Yeah, fairy. Feyre goes and drinks the fairy wine and basically dances the whole night. That's the summary of this chapter. Yeah. We learn that Alice's people are called... I'm not going to pretend.
Urisk.
Urisk.
Urisk? I don't know.
I don't know. But she's allowed to go to the summer solstice. Just not the spring one. But because they used to have the main celebration at the summer court, but things are different. So I guess now they just have one here too, since they can't leave. She notes that she hope it doesn't require the same rites as the Fire Knight does. Jealous, right?
Yeah.
And she changes into a flowing cornflower blue chiffon gown, which I noted because we've been watching How I Met Your Mother, or rewatching. And at the end, Barney is trying to get a tie. I won't spoil what's happening, but it's like cornflower blue. That made me think of that. So...
Lucian says, cauldron boil me again.
In this series, that's like the thing.
Yeah. She looks positively fey. And it made her want to purr. Again with the purring.
And she's like, I don't know if I should thank Lucian for the compliment. And I'm like, is it a compliment?
I'd imagine so.
You think so?
The fae seem to think that they're better than the humans, so...
I guess so.
If they're like, oh, you look like a fae.
Then she's pretty.
That's pretty. They think she's pretty to their standards.
Yeah, I guess so.
And they go, Lucian disappears. So she eats her fill of strawberry shortcake, apple tart, and blueberry pie. But she's just sitting alone beneath a tree.
Yeah. And she starts drinking the fairy wine. Mm-hmm. And he kind of...
I'm pretty sure he said don't drink it. Right?
Yeah, like it'll affect you.
Yeah.
I think this is when, she thought the food was going to affect her when she first started. I think it's just the wine that will affect her. But yeah, he mutters, "Cauldron, boil, and fry me." Okay, so in every fantasy novel, I don't know if Fourth Wing had one, but generally there's something they say instead of like our typical like exasperation phrases like "oh my gosh" or
Well, butter my biscuit.
sure. So this one is "Cauldron, boil me." A couple of other ones they have like. There's one that I read. It was weird every time they said it. It was like trees. Like that's what they said when they were mad, like to curse essentially. It was very strange. But so "Cauldron, boil me." The fry me is funny, I think, but it comes up a lot.
Yes.
So
she's just drinking this delicious fairy wine.
yeah, and she's just dancing.
She's dancing. She looks over to the musician, the fiddler, and it's Tamlin. Tamlin's the fiddler. He's encouraging her to dance. So she's just sitting there dancing, all drunk off the fairy wine.
Yeah. And eventually he takes her to the meadow to watch the shimmering shapes float across the grass, which are
Will-o'-the-wisps. Will-o'-the-wisps.
Spirits of air and light.
Yes.
They dance. He kisses her
Fiercely.
And
Something about her father once telling her that I should let my sisters imagine a better life. I told him there was no such thing. And she said, never understood, because I couldn't believe that it was even possible until now.
oh,
It was the happiest moment of her life.
I know.
How sweet.
How sweet.
That's the end of the chapter.
Yeah. So chapter 26, they're at breakfast and Rhysand, High Lord of the Night Court, shows up. He figures out that Feyre is there and asks for her name, and Feyre gives the name Claire Better. So, the first thing I noted was he could have had me right there on the table. Like, girl, please calm down. Right? Because
she's been there how long at this point, and she hasn't gotten any?
But poor Lucian is sitting right there.
She doesn't care.
They talk about the Blight taking out 24 of their younglings. So, like, 24 kids are gone in the Winter Court. His contact says other courts are being hit hard, though the Night Court, of course, manages to remain unscathed. So then I think Tamlin sends her behind a curtain.
Yeah, go hide behind those curtains.
Lucian stands in front of her.
Yeah.
And she kind of is like peeking out, and she's like, oh, he has no mask on. He's from another... He must be something else, basically. And she's like, wait, I met him before.
I know him.
He's
Fire the pretty
Night.
Boy.
Yeah, the most beautiful man she's ever seen was Rhysand. Rhysand. Is it Rhysand?
I assume.
Yeah, Rhysand. See, can't pronounce anything. I will say when I first read the series, I said Rhysand for most of the books. But, or this book, I guess. But, Rhysand. High Lord of the Night Court. So, we learn
about Under the Mountain.
Yes.
It doesn't say what it is, just mentions it. And we have a name.
Yes.
Amarantha.
Yep.
And Rhysand is her whore.
Yes.
He's, is that any way to speak to a High Lord of Prithian?
And
then Lucian says, you have no power here, so get out of here. Amarantha's bed is growing cold.
Yeah, what a singer. But then he notes that Amarantha has thoughts about Tamlin. So I feel like Amarantha ultimately wants
the Tamlin.
And basically he's there to be like, are you done, basically? Like, what are you up to? And he figures out that Feyre's there because there's 3 place settings versus the 2. Rhysand says, like, oh, Amarantha will enjoy breaking her. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Threat.
Blah, blah, blah. What's her name?
Yeah.
Claire
And
Better.
she brings the first one that... I think it's weird that she gave that name versus just making up a name. And he leaves and is like, I'm looking forward to seeing you 3 under the mountain. I'll give Amarantha your regards. And then he just, like, vanishes into nothing.
Yep.
As if he stepped through a rip in the world, leaving us alone in a horrible, trembling silence. So...
Seems like Rhysand's pretty cool.
But no, he's a bad guy.
I know. He could just disappear.
I mean, that is a pretty cool thing, but...
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else from that chapter?
No.
Basically, breakfast, threat.
We have a name.
Claire Better.
She.
Yeah. We meet him officially as the High Lord. So that means that severed head came from him.
Yeah.
The other week, whenever that was.
They talked about that in this chapter. I just didn't highlight it for it.
So chapter 27, Tamlin is sending her home. They finally sleep together right when she's leaving, and Tamlin says that he loves her, but she doesn't say it back. So.
Yeah, and she's saying she doesn't want to think about what Rhysand said. Why she might be forced to go under the mountain. But she's glad that there's at least a name to the female presence.
Yeah.
And then Tamlin says, I'm sending you home.
Yeah, and he's taken on her life debt. So if someone comes... Which I'm like, who was coming to inquire after the broken law? Okay. I'll take responsibility for Andros' death. So... basically, he's like, there's no reason to keep you because you're going to die, essentially. I don't want you to basically be in their hands.
He's trying to protect her, basically, from the people.
And she says, like, I suppose it'll be easier if I'm gone. Who wants someone around who's still covered in thorns? Thorns, thorny, prickly, sour, contrary. Which I'm like, what is she talking about? Right? It's very woe is me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, send me home, please. Thank you.
But she loves him.
I mean, I know, but...
She doesn't care about her family anymore.
I guess
She stopped thinking about them. She's happy they're just painting.
They have a moment. We won't go into details.
Yeah.
But...
His claws are out a bunch, which is weird.
Yes.
And then they make love. He says, I love you.
Thorns and all.
Thorns and all.
So...
Perhaps those are the thorns and roses.
Yeah. And that's the end of that chapter. So, chapter 28, Feyre heads home. Tamlin tells her he loves her again, but Feyre doesn't say it back. She arrives at a huge chateau. Her family doesn't recognize her at first, but they are so glad she's back. Which I'd be like, what the heck has happened? So she... Oh, this is your note, but...
Yeah. Who has the little ivory hat? Was that her?
Feyre, because they're dressing her in the latest human fashions.
Little ivory hat.
I half expected a parasol to go with it.
Yes. He kisses her again. He says, I love you. She says I should say it. Which I'll hold a comment, since I know the end of the book.
Yes.
But she just can't.
Yeah. Basically because... It seems because he's immortal and she would grow old and die.
True.
That seems to be her hesitancy. Yeah. But she arrives. They knock her out again, but she gets there. And then her sisters don't recognize her.
Yep. And they say, you'll never believe it, almost a week after you went to care for Aunt Ripley, that being the fake aunt, some stranger appeared at her door and asked Father to invest his money for him. Random, they don't question that at all.
Yeah.
And then all of the ships they lost were found, complete with Father's profits.
Of course.
How lucky. And then, she's thinking about how Tamlin had said he loved her, and then he'd sent her away to keep her safe. Blah, blah, blah. And whatever storm was about to break in Prithian was brutal enough that even a High Lord couldn't stand against it. Then she remembers the Suriel's command of stay with the High Lord.
Yeah, and she's like, I feel like I didn't listen.
Yeah.
Like, I broke it. I went home.
Yeah.
He told me just to stay with it. It would be fine. So.
Yeah.
That's the end of that chapter. These are kind of quick chapters. But
Yeah.
Chapter 29, she's home. Her quote-unquote aunt has sent her back with jewels. Elaine tells Feyre that Nesta went to go see her when she left originally. So.
Yeah. I've got several notes about all of the uncut jewels. An uncut ruby the size of a duck's egg.
Well,
and then she comments on how the food tastes disgusting.
Yeah.
Basically, compared to the goodness there in Prithian.
Well, I didn't highlight it, I don't think, but I think they talk about how her father immediately, like, scurries away to, like...
Go count the money, basically.
Yeah, which was like, what a terrible father. You know, like, oh,
count
here,
the gold.
This is mine now. Like, it almost is like it's not hers. I don't know. It seemed a little, like, squirrely to me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the food tastes disgusting.
And they comment that the high society people had acted as if they'd just been ill for 8 years.
Yeah.
Or had gone away, not that they'd just been a few villages over.
Which, like, why would you want to be a part of them then?
Yeah.
But.
And then Elaine's talking about she went to see you, you know, referring to Nesta. She was gone for only about a week. She said that her carriage broke down not halfway there, and it was easier to just come back. But you wouldn't know since you never got any of our letters.
Yeah, and Feyre notes, like, has she just been turned around by the glamour magic?
Probably.
Or, like, what happened? Elaine...
So, yeah, Elaine is asking her, you know, what happened at Aunt Ripley's house? Did you meet someone? She says just good food and rest, right? Because obviously she's fattened up.
Yeah.
But she comments that Elaine had come alive here, and she was very joyous. There wasn't a servant or gardener who didn't smile at her, and even the cook found excuses to bring her plates of cookies and tarts at various points of the day. So she was just a happy girl, basically.
Yeah.
And then she said she went to bed each night praying that I'd awaken to find myself in his manor, or that I'd receive a message summoning me to his side.
She misses him.
Yes. And
She went out to see their old cottage.
And was it Elaine that's looked at it with hope? She said I had looked at it with nothing but hatred.
Yeah.
I knew which one of us had been stronger.
Yeah.
And that was it for that chapter.
Yeah.
Basically, her family's pretty sad. Tamlin did a good job for them.
Yes. Better than I think we were probably even imagining.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you think maybe just a nicer house than the cottage, or like food just shows
like,
up.
You know, like a small, like they're comfortable. Not that
Yes.
they're like overly rich,
I
but
have a
they're.
house in the suburbs, basically.
But now they're like the thing of the town, basically.
Yes.
So, okay, so chapter 30. Her father is throwing a ball in her honor. Nesta said that the glamour didn't work on her. She remembers everything, so she went after Feyre, but she couldn't get through the wall. And Nesta asked Feyre to teach her to paint. So, random.
Yeah.
These are kind of just like build-up chapters to, obviously, the next chapter. But
Yeah. She talks about the impoverished of her village didn't ask questions when she handed them little bags of gold and silver.
which is kind of sweet that she goes out
Yeah.
and hands things to the poor.
Yeah. She meets someone who had been a boy when she left.
Isaac.
Oh, was it Isaac?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
she runs into him, and he's married now.
He blossomed with his wife.
Yeah,
He's made him into a man.
yeah. But basically, she's kind of like, what the heck? These people shunned us
And let us starve
for years. And now they're like, because we're rich. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, come back. We love you.
Yeah.
So,
She says she'll soon purchase some paints and start again.
I feel like she's just kind of like gardening with Elaine,
Yeah.
hanging around, trying to figure out what to do with her life now. So.
And then, I think, is it Nesta who says, I think your home is somewhere very far away.
Yes.
Says there is no Aunt Ripley. Yeah, your beast's little trick didn't work on me. Apparently, an iron will is all it takes to keep a glamour from digging in. Of course. But how did she know it was going to happen?
What do you mean?
Like, how did she know she's going to be glamored?
I don't think she did. I think she just was like...
She's so stubborn in general. She's such a stubborn bitch.
Yes. That she just basically is like, I do not accept.
Yeah.
So, because she says, like, I watched, like, Father and Elaine go from sobbing in hysterics into nothing. They were just, like, blank. And how they talked about how lucky Feyre was to be taken to this aunt's house.
Aunt's house.
So, I don't know. I think she just basically was like, she's just so stubborn, like in her personality. She's so stubborn that it just didn't work. Because how would she know they could glamour?
I guess that's true.
She wouldn't know that.
That's true. And she says she got to the wall and couldn't find a way through.
Yep.
Which Feyre is surprised.
Yeah, because she went like 2 days.
Trekking through the woods.
And
2 days back.
Through the winter woods. Which I would be like, what the heck? You can do that, but you can't come out and help me hunt?
You wouldn't help me hunt. You would barely help me chop the wood. And you'll just go 2 days and 2 days.
At least I think it has proved that while they're not great sisters...
Yeah.
Maybe they love her in the way they can. But I do think it's nice to see that Nesta did go after her.
Yes.
Even after all of this. So...
Yeah.
Because she notes, like, my father wouldn't have come for me. He didn't possess the courage, the anger. If anything, he would have hired someone to come after me. Mm-hmm. Nesta had gone with the mercenary, I guess she hired, right? To go with her. She's like, my hateful, cold sister had been willing to brave Prythian to rescue me. So... Because you know what? She's the older sister.
Sure.
But she doesn't act like it. But
sure.
She did not marry Thomas Mandray. Because she realized that he wouldn't have gone with me to save you from Prythian. So Feyre was, I think she notes that in the last chapter, like, oh, thank God she didn't marry him. Yeah. So she basically tells Nesta everything. And Nesta asks her to teach her how to paint. So when people say, because this is a thing that when, like Feyre's like, oh, I painted. There's this thing where people say, like, what if she's a terrible painter? And, like, I get that. I think it's funny to think about that. But I also think that Nesta is not the type of sister, number one, who would just be, like, not making fun of her for that if she was terrible. But also, I wouldn't think she would ask her to teach me how to paint if
she sucked.
If she sucked. So I didn't remember this part until I was rereading it, but reluctantly, I guess Feyre is a good painter. It's funnier to imagine her being terrible and everyone just being like, oh, thank you, and she gives them paintings and stuff. But but alas, I don't think it's true. Yeah. Unfortunately. So basically, they kind of bond a little bit.
Yeah, Nessa says that she couldn't take care of us the way that Feyre did. And she hated her for that. But she hated her dad more.
Yes.
And she still does.
Because he was basically letting them starve to death.
Yeah. So. And he let their mother die. And she says, you would have gone to the ends of the earth to save your high lord.
Yeah.
Feyre says, yes, I would have.
Yep.
I think that was pretty much the end of the chapter.
Yeah. So, chapter 31. This is the final chapter of this section for us. She's at the ball. She finds out that the Better family has all died, except they couldn't find Claire's body. So she's like, I have to go back because she knows what happened, basically. And then finally, her father and Elaine remember what happened to her. She does end up making it through the wall. It takes her a little bit. And she gets back to the manor, and it's a wreck. but there's no one there. ...
So, I mean, the chapter opens up with her dad thinking of buying the better land. It says since none of the family survived, and it would be a good investment property.
Yeah, he's like, one of you girls might build a house on there when you're ready to, basically, I feel like, get married and move out. But
but they couldn't find Claire's body.
yes, the house burned down. Everyone died.
Yeah.
It happened in the dead of the night. The family, the servants, everyone died. And it happened the day before that Feyre arrived. So,
I wonder who could have done it.
yeah.
Is it Feyre saying, I think something very bad might be happening
Yes.
in Bertha? Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Nesta says, Father once told you to never come back, and I'm telling you now. We can take care of ourselves.
Basically, she's like, I have to go back.
Thanks
and
to your
like,
High Lord's generous gift.
Yeah,
of all
for
of our
real.
wealth.
So, yeah, she's like, I have to go back. And her sister's like, yeah, I think you do, but just don't. I think it's kind of mean, like, don't come back. I mean, I get where she's coming from. Like, we'll be okay. And I guess they're not that close, but it kind of comes off like, don't ever come back here. We don't really care about you that much.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and she starts, like, giving them the rundown.
Yeah, they can lie. Iron doesn't bother them. But Ash does. Ash does work. And take my money and buy a grove of...
The ash trees for Elaine to
tend.
Yeah. And then, her father and Elaine finally remember. They're kind of sad. They're crying. I think Nesta notes that I don't think I'd be particularly fond of fairies. So she rides all day and night, basically. Oh, no, just all day. She stops when it's dark.
Yep.
Until she gets to the wall.
Yep.
And she gets to it. It's like an invisible... I'm imagining like a force field, but that's probably not correct, is it?
I mean, it basically seems what it is. I mean, it's an invisible wall in the forest.
Yeah.
Force field.
And she like walks down it to find the gate.
Yeah.
To get through it.
Yeah, it says it took her 2 days, and the night between them was more terrifying than any I'd experienced at the spring court. Before she spied the mossy stones placed across from each other, a faint whorl carved into them.
Yeah.
A gate.
Yeah. So then she like trucks it back to the spring court.
Yep.
And she gets to the manor. And it's empty.
Yep.
She's like ready to fight. She's got an arrow, a bow and arrow. And it's empty. She notes like a tomb. And she sinks to her knees. And he's gone, basically.
Oh, no.
Because she's like, Tam?
As if he's just giving me that, hello, dear.
Yeah, Tam, my voice echoed through the house mocking me. Alone in the wreckage of the manor, I sank to my knees. He was gone. And that's where we end this chapter section. Dun, dun, dun.
Bum, bum.
So I would say, if you are not hooked yet, this next little bit is where, like, I feel like it starts picking up.
Yes, this next bit is when it picks up.
A couple of these little chapters were a little bit boring.
Yes.
But I will say also that Sarah J. Maas is notorious for, like, the last 100 pages is when, like, everything happens. So if you can make it to the last 100 pages, it's a good book.
Yeah. Why not just make the book shorter then?
Because I think a lot of it leads to it. You wouldn't know what was going on.
I guess so.
Right? You wouldn't be like, what is
detail
happening? I don't understand what the blight is. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it would just be like, you'd just be thrown in it. It would be really boring.
True.
So, I think this is one of the slower of her books to get into. So, if you can make it past this book, you're set.
Okay.
So, but what did you think? As a reread, because we're not giving any spoilers. In the next book, when you haven't read as much, there'll be more theories. You'll be able to predict what's going to happen. But since you do know
what's going to happen, for some reason, I remembered her hanging around the house longer.
Like, what her
It seemed that in my memory, that there was more chapters before he sent her home.
Oh.
But,
I mean, I feel like she spent a long time there.
yeah, she
Time
did.
just passes.
I think because I'm reading the chapters in a different way.
Yeah. You're not just reading it. You're kind of noting things.
Mm-hmm.
I do think a reread is always interesting because you find things. I mean, this is probably my fourth time rereading it. And now I will say I don't always read this book again because it's not my super favorite one, but I've found things that I didn't even remember happened in this book, so there's a lot of little details, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week is chapters 32 through the end of the book. I think it's 66, but I could be wrong. But whatever the last chapter is, we're finishing ACOTAR. So, are you excited to finish it and move into the next book in the series?
Yeah.
With a little bit more mystery for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, thanks for listening. This was a bit of a longer episode.
Yep.
But honestly, I imagine as they go, as the books get a little more detailed and more things are happening, they might lend themselves to longer episodes in general.
Yeah.
So, make sure you're following us on Instagram. Go subscribe on YouTube. Give us a review. We always like to get a review.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you want the reading guide for this, the link will be in the description. And yeah. Is that it?
I think so.
So we'll see you next week for the end of ACOTAR. Woo, woo, woo.
Yay.
Okay, bye.
So long.